he from?
Probably the second round. My daughter wants to drive the first round.
I see Nick, he's
Off the sheep.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, checking the time. It is 7 o'clock. Are we ready to roll? Perfect. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Michelle, can you take roll call?
Mayor Horn,
Here.
Alderman Kittle,
Here.
Alderman Breeze,
Here.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Here.
Alderman Montello,
Here.
Alderman Kraft,
here.
and I have Alderman Volkert as absent.
That is correct. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Public for which it stands.
God, indivisible, with liberty.
Almost dumped our table.
Adoption of the agenda.
A motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Public comments. Anybody wish to make a public comment at this time? Audience, or do we have anybody online?
You have Nick Vivian is online and Tom Linfers.
All right, any comments from the online crowd? So as the people in the audience can see, I'm kind of a little bit dressed up. We have a fabulous event going on Thursday.
Wait a minute, Mr. Mayor, they
Sure.
really can't see that you're
Well, they
dressed
saw me
up.
earlier, so I've been
I don't know if they can
mode.
really see your legs. Maybe you'd want to walk in front and let them get the full Monty effect.
I'll second it.
So we do have a parade at Thursday, 4 o'clock. And depending on who you talk to, I think they're saying it's the 45th. I have a button from 1981 that says it was the 6th annual at that time, so I'm not quite sure they'd know exactly how many parades have gone on. But at any rate, buttons are available at some of the local establishments. Support the local parade, support the heritage in this community. Come on down, 4 o'clock on Thursday, have a great time. That's my comments. Anybody else? Perfect. All right, consent agenda.
I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Old business, 7.1, roles and responsibilities of mayor, city council, and city administrator.
Good evening, Mayor Horn and City Council. This item was discussed at our February work session meeting. If you recall, at our last regular meeting, we updated and just to clarify roles and responsibilities of our board and commission chairpersons and city staff. And so we felt this was kind of the next logical step. And so the document in your packet is the same document you received at the work session, really just kind of clarifying what roles and responsibilities are, something we would review on a regular basis, and also make part of our onboarding process for future mayor, city council, and same thing with our board and commission chairpersons. We are tentatively scheduling our board and commission training the last week of April. So right after our appointments would be made for the citizen appointments, and we would know which committees the council would be serving on. We would have that training put on by city staff and the city attorney. So there'll be more information to come along in the upcoming weeks about that. But happy to answer any questions that you have on the roles and responsibilities.
Anybody have any questions?
No, not really questions, just thanks for doing that. It looks like a lot of work. A lot of things that we need to make sure that we adhere to, both as a council, as a mayor, as staff, as chairpersons of different committees. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. The only thing I didn't see is what happens if we don't. And that's something maybe a future council will have to, maybe look into, or I'm not envisioning that happening, but it could. And so just a lot of good work and a lot of good information, so thank you.
Very good. Anything else on that one?
No, we would look for a formal motion
Yeah,
to approve if
I'll
the
make a
council's-
motion to approve this policy as outlined.
I'll second that.
All right, we do have a motion and a second to approve the roles and responsibilities. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Breeze?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Then under new business, 8.1, the Avondale preliminary plat.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We're going to go through kind of a brief overview of the preliminary plat for the location that we're calling Avondale. And if we have questions on that afterwards, we'll take any of those questions. So next slide, please. So OBrien Homes Investments LLC has applied for a preliminary plat of what is now going to be known as Avondale. If approved, it's 154 dwelling units. It went through this process. Development Review Committee reviewed it, and we had a number, probably at least a good month or so on that. It went into the paper as a public notice, which is an extra thing that we've done for preliminary plats. It's not required by our ordinance. We wanted to make sure that the people knew about it. We had it at a public hearing at the Plan Commission on March 1st, and then City Council on the 14th for tonight for kind of an overview and recommendation or approval. And so what we have here is the subject site location. It's located at the southwest quadrant of County Road Double G and 140th. It's about 29 acres roughly. It's guided in our comprehensive plan for medium to high density residential, which makes sense in this location. It's zoned Z4, which in allowed uses in the Z4 is single family and two family dwellings, which is what they're proposing. The surrounding uses are single and two-family homes, the Paperjack Creek and the elementary school, and across the street we have the, as you may remember, Meadow Crossing. That's over there. We did hold an additional neighborhood meeting, which we held that here at the Civic Center on February 24th. We had about 6 folks in attendance, somewhere in that area. It was a good meeting. It lasted about an hour. We had the engineers who are here tonight answer a lot of really good questions on stormwater, on safety of crossings, on public streets that are being put in. And so there was a lot of really good questions that were asked that night and answered. Then at the Planning Commission meeting on March 1st, we had that public hearing. We again had probably 10 people in attendance, I would say, at that meeting. And so I think the meeting went fairly well at the public hearing. Let's go to the next slide here. What we looked at, and this is what was reviewed at the public hearing, was the actual site plan from the preliminary plat. If you look at the purple homes, those are the two-family dwellings, and there's 86 of those that are proposed. And the red are the single-family lots, and there's 68 of those proposed. When we review this, we look at everything from setbacks to stormwater. So we looked at setbacks, lot requirements. So the width of a lot, which is if it's a single family, is 80 feet and the twins are 40 feet. We look at maximum lot coverage. We look at the streets and the access there too. So for this development in particular, there's access out onto County Road Double G, and there's 2 access points that are coming out, 3 access points onto 140th. We also have an access point not to an arterial or a collector street, but an interior local street that comes from these Paperjack Bend subdivision there. You'll see it's Martin Court. We looked at all of those. We look at park dedication at that time. We look at easements, utilities, stormwater. We even look at the existing buildings that are on that site and asking them to raise those buildings and kind of giving them an idea of what they need to do for that. So we looked through all of those things, and they are matching up and meeting with our ordinances. And I think next slide there, Michelle. We're going to go to the next one. This is the actual preliminary plat. The DRC is recommending to the City Council approval of the Avondale preliminary plat subject to the 16 conditions that are in your report. What I want to note from the Plan Commission to this meeting is that we did add some things to the conditions in the report based on the comments from the public hearing and the folks in attendance. So there was a couple of items added for safety on the crossing. There was some information added for keeping the job site clean, which is number 16. There was some information added to the lighting section, I think, which is number 7. So number 4, number 7, and number 16 in the memo had some additions to those from the Plan Commission public hearing. The other thing I suppose that's important here for the City Council to know is that the Plan Commission on a 3-3 vote did not approve their recommendation moving it forward. Obviously, they're a committee that does the recommending to you folks, and you guys can make the final recommendation, or excuse me, final approval for that.
And Craig can speak, he was at the meeting, I mean, I was at the meeting, and Ron also had been at that meeting. I think what you have in 7 and 16 then kind of, and that's why you put that in there.
Yep.
It addressed some of those concerns that was brought up at that public hearing, which is why it went to a 3-3 tie.
Yes, and I think some of those things were concerns of the Plan Commission members along with the public. We wanted to make sure when it came to the City Council, we added those conditions in to make sure that everyone was kind of happy with this development as it moves through. So that's really what we have as staff. I know that Alderman Kraft it's her district, and so I'm wondering if there's anything that she might have to add, or if there was constituents in her area that had some things that we wanted to bring up possibly.
Yeah, thank you,
yeah.
Beth. I did reach out to Beth this morning, and we chatted, or I reached out last week, and we ended up chatting this morning. I do have a number of individuals that are very concerned, not only about the development, but to be completely honest and transparent, the builder. Individuals have, expressed deep concern with the density of housing that is going in there. So the difference from what is currently in Paperjack Place, which I don't know if that's more of a low density area versus this medium high density, but just the number of homes that are going in there, what the implications are going to be for traffic, for safety. A number of people expressed, serious issues with the extension of Martin Court, which would impede the existing, is it called Blue Jay Trail? Or what do we call it? Is it Blue Jay Trail? That would impede that trail. So it would be the only section that now there's traffic that's going through it. It is one of very few spaces where people can enter from 140th and go all the way down to Paperjack without traffic coming in. It's like one of few trails. So there's a lot of concerns, especially with the people that back up to there from Paperjack Place. I'm sure. So anyways, I talked to Beth this morning and I got a little bit more information. So some of the constituents had heard that the trail was actually being replaced with a road. So not just that a road was actually going to kind of go into that area or cut off the trail a little bit, but that it was going to be replaced with a road that then would connect to actually, I don't know if it was Southview. I think somebody said Southview, which I didn't think that could even happen. So there were some issues with that, but I do understand that there are additional safety mitigation strategies that have been put in place that are going to be required of the developer, especially in that area, that there's lighting stipulations that have been made. I apologize, I've got like a horrible cold, so I sound terrible. I don't know if you could speak to the density at all, Beth. I know it's in line with what our the zoning is for that area. So
I think density is tough, right? Because we're the ones who are saying you can fit this in if your lot size is 80 or 40. So we as a group, as a policy in our ordinance, are saying that this density is allowed. So we can't go back unless the council decides to change the ordinance to change this density in this area in particular.
what is the difference between lot sizes from Paperjack Place and what's being proposed at Avondale? Do you know?
So there would be, like if there was a new home to be built there, there would be no change because that's what the ordinance is in that area. But if they were built, say, before 2015's ordinance, it could have been a different size at that
Okay.
time.
That's
Okay.
not the question she's asking. The question she's asking, sorry, Carrie, is that if you take a building lot that's in Paperjack Place and compare it to a building lot that's in
Yes.
Avondale, how do those two compare? That's the question. What's
It's
being proposed for Avondale? How does it compare to a lot in Paperjack Place?
because it seems like the ones in Paperjack Place are quite a bit bigger,
Well,
but I'm guessing those are townhouses that are in the purple that I'm looking at, or twin homes, I'm sorry.
They are, so they're twin homes in that area, so both of those would be one lot. So it would be, some of them would be similar. Obviously, on the corners here, they're gonna be a little bit larger lots, as you can see. And that is throughout the city. Some people may choose to have larger lots or were built with larger lots at the time, based on our ordinance. And as most of them come in, if you look at Meadow Crossing, for instance, they followed the same, lot sizes as Avondale is
Okay.
following.
Okay. And then I also thought it would be helpful, Beth, if you wouldn't mind sharing it, I don't want to say it wrong, but why it's so important for us to connect the neighborhoods and not make it an issue that people have to go out of the neighborhood back onto the main arterial roadway, what kind of the purpose is for that, and what the intention actually has been the whole time for Martin Court.
So, the intention for that was always to be brought through. So we have a street plan that looks into the future. So our streets are mapped out a little bit in certain areas. So this was obviously mapped out as a plan to have Martin Court go all the way into this new subdivision, whatever it was, right? So we have that plan for that. And then the real reason to kind of keep those streets, which are called local streets, in those areas are so that mail carriers and UPS and other people that are kind of going on daily routes don't have to pull back out onto the arterial or collector streets to go in through these developments, because the arterial streets are really meant for faster travel. So the speeds will be a little bit higher, and they're meant for people to be going through and not stopping a lot at different intersections. So we wouldn't have intersections in a lot of those, right? You wouldn't have a four-way stop there on an arterial street as much as you would in the local streets. So it is really important to connect the local streets for those kind of interior, as we would call it, travel.
Thank you. You explained that way better than I could have.
Beth, I know there's some land set aside for parks.
Yes.
Is there any kind of plan to have a set aside for the trail system, or is it just land set aside for the parks?
So we do have a section that they're donating, and that would go to the park board for approval,
Yep.
kind of once the preliminary plat is through and kind of during their final plat timeframe. So they do have a section which is large enough to accompany the 10% of parkland that would be due. And then they do have trails going throughout. And hey, Matt, can you stand up and point to the trails for me so that I have? Okay, so I'll talk for you, Matt.
That's
So
okay.
right along the south line, there's the trail Carrie was talking about. So it's the current trail that goes through, and then he's gonna connect them. He's gonna follow the trail all the way up and out to that intersection at Double G that goes to the school.
Okay.
And then in the future, which isn't platted, this is the one that I think you're probably most interested in, Craig,
It
is the
is.
trail that we're gonna put, have them put in kind of a nature trail that goes over, he's gonna point to it. It'll be somewhere in this area that
And-
kind of connects.
We had always kind of thought on the park board that there would be some type of connection, whether it be paved or not. Probably not, more of a nature trail. If you know where the trail goes on the river length, it goes upriver basically to that foundation. That's the oldest foundation in Richmond. We would always kind of assume that that would come up and connect to this Powers property or the
And I believe,
ex-Powers
no, I
property.
believe we're having them do that. I think
Okay.
that's what we're kind of getting at, a portion of it. The city would have to do the other portion.
When I
Yep.
talked to you about it originally, that was part of the ideas and part of the
Yep.
thoughts, but I don't see it as that way in here as much as okay. But it's a plan. It's,
It wouldn't necessarily be shown on here on the plat, and it would just be a nature trail. A lot of that gets into wetland area, so we
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
be able to pave it.
okay.
But yeah,
Thank
you
you.
would be able to now have that connection going all the way towards Paperjack Park.
That would be
into
nice.
The Oaks Foundation.
Easier to get to schools, off of roads, through this development too.
I think it's very important that the trails connect. Having these individual independent trails that don't really lead anywhere I don't think is ideal. I think we want I appreciate hearing that they're going to be.
Here's a question I have. Who's representing OBrien Homes tonight?
Susie Overing is representing Overing Homes.
And you were here for the planning commission? Can you speak to, I wasn't here, but can you speak to why you think that was a 3-3 vote?
You wanna
Susie,
come up to the mic? Do you
you
wanna
have to
come up
get
to
up
the
and talk
microphone?
into the
Paul, do you want
microphone.
to come up?
Or
If you
Paul.
wanted to.
So Paul Hoppy is here also, and he's been working with this group. I would say, Paul, you could introduce yourself, but representing the seller, if that's correct statement.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Paul Hoppy. I represent the sellers in this transaction, but have been working intimately with the OBrien Homes and the city for probably almost 18 months on this project since I took it over. So I represent as the realtor, but I'm also a member of the family as well. So I'm representing both the transactional and the seller of this particular property. This is a really good project for the city, and let me just kind of explain why, and Carrie, hopefully I can answer some of your questions as well. I think this is a parcel that, the city has wanted to see come into the city for at least 2 decades, and it's been challenging. It's had some emotional challenges to get through. It's had some obligational ties to it, that has prevented it. It existed in the township, so even to bring it to this phase of approval, there was some challenges transactionally that we had to move through with adjacent landowners to annex the property and some other challenges as well. And I can say over the last 18 months, working both with OBrien and the city, in my capacity has been very good. It's been a really good experience, to be honest. When the family first reached out to me, to represent the property, they did so because I have experience as a land developer. So I am a realtor, but I'm also a land developer, mostly in the Washington County area. We're touching a little bit in Hudson, but mostly the Washington County, Chisago County area. And so they reached out to me to help them find a solution to a lot of the challenges. And when I first took on this project, the first thing I did is I sat down with Noah and I sat down with Beth, and we talked about best use of the property to really try to identify, where our target audience was from a transactional perspective of bringing a developer in and making sure that we got the right project for the city. Part of those discussions that I had with the city originally was talking about, the housing market in Richmond and where the housing gap exists. That's important as a developer when we come in to understand what the project scope should be, because we want to provide to the city and a builder an opportunity to bring an attractive product that's needed within the market space. That's important to a city because as you get first-time home buyers and you get end-of-life transitional home buyers, we have to have a place to bring them and keep them in the community, otherwise they exit because it simply doesn't have a market space for them. And so when we sat down with the city and really identified, where the housing gap was, that gives us an idea from a marketing perspective of what the project should be to provide housing in all aspects of the market, including those that are affordable. And I think this project meets, that criteria is creating some property in your market space that's missing or that is probably underrepresented but high demand, meaning a lot of people want it, just simply doesn't exist. So from a developer's perspective and a realtor perspective, the first thing we do is we test the market. So I took this piece of property and I brought it to a couple of other developers I know to see if there was an opportunity for them to come in under a traditional development model. Under a traditional development model, what that means is a developer comes in, develops the property, and then tries to bring multiple builders onto the site, maybe 2 or 3 builders to come in and build the property out. What happens in Richmond is your property values aren't like they are, let's say, in Hudson. So as a result, the end finished lot we can't sell for as much as we can in Hudson, or say Stillwater or Lake Elmo or some of those border communities. The challenge to that is the cost to develop is the same regardless of the community. So the cost to put the road in, the materials and the labor are the same. And so what happens is we get traditional developers that come in and say, the margin doesn't exist to make this as profitable for me to do, therefore we don't want to get involved in the product because it's too great of a risk. So as a seller of the land that knows development, then we change and we have to pivot because it doesn't have that super attractive because most of those people want to be in the Rivertown communities right now because the values are greater. And so to pivot and make this a successful product or project, what I have to do is go what's called builder direct model. And that's my specialty. That's partially why I was brought in. The builder direct model actually eliminates the traditional developer and shifts the project over to a builder so that the builder can capture what we call the margin from the finished lot to the end sale. Under that model, it actually can be successful. Now, the challenge to that is finding a builder that, number one, wants to take the project on, number two, has the financial and build-out capacity to do it, and number three, that has an interest in the community. So those are the three challenges that we face. And so in this particular case, we looked at a number of your local builders. Some that you're really familiar with are at capacity, meaning they're already building to their capacity, so this project wasn't attractive to them. But then we have, we look for other people within the community that have the capacity, not only the dollar capacity, but also the capacity, meaning they can build enough homes fast enough that they can fill the project out without extending it a decade because they'd never be able to afford and financially do it. When I decided to partner with OBrien Homes, I did so because of a couple reasons. They are invested in the community. They build, they live, or they have a business here, they build here, they're familiar with the community. That's important as a builder, okay? I also partnered with them because they have the financial capabilities and they also have the build-out capabilities. I'm gonna say that over the last 12 to 16 months working with the OBrien Homes has been very delightful. And I work with a lot of builders in both, like I say, the western Wisconsin and eastern metropolitan area, and they have been really good to work with. That has been my experience. We've put some pretty tough demands on them, and they've met them. We've had to negotiate with some adjacent landowners, and they participated in it in order to annex the property into the city, which lies on the seller's responsibility, and we have exercised and completed that and committed to it as a seller perspective. The project as a whole is good for this community. It brings much needed real estate to this community. When I say real estate, it brings housing projects or housing type that is underrepresented but have a high demand, and it will keep people within your community, first-time home buyers and transitional end of life as well, giving them opportunity as well as they face that. One of the things I just want to as an example to demonstrate what my collaboration and cooperation with the OBrien firm has been is some of you may know my grandmother, Glendetta Power. She was the last person to occupy the farm almost 2 decades ago. And if you knew her at all, or you knew the family, you knew that the gardens that she had there were very important to her. They came only second to her faith and her family. And as we went through this development, we talked about an important piece is honoring the legacy of the landowners and some of the legacy of the city. And so when we had these conversations with the OBrien firm, and we talked about some of the family legacy there, if you'll notice this development, the streets are named after flowers, which is kind of a subtle honor to the legacy of my grandmother, who that was one of her important passions, is her gardens. And so even in that small representation, I think well communicated and clearly identified expectations can make this a very good partnership between the city of New Richmond and the OBrien firm as they try and attempt to build much needed housing in the city of New Richmond for a variety of people. So, to speak to Carrie's behalf, density in this project was not necessarily the OBrien's initial idea. The density in this project was really identifying a need for available homes and home types in this community to keep it a viable and vibrant community. And that was my intention based on the feedback that I received from the city of New Richmond on what type of housing was needed in this project. I know that there were some challenges, at your meeting a couple weeks ago. I can say that we've had some really good sidebar conversations with
Yeah,
OBrien relative to that.
Kind of address Mike's question. Do you
Yeah.
want to address that?
I can address that. I think there was, some comments, that, were non-malicious in intent, but obviously probably not appropriate for the venue that we were in at the moment. We've had those conversations relative to the appropriateness, of some of those meetings and the intent of those meetings and what is considered to be appropriate conduct in those events. I can also say that, I truly believe in the fact that those comments weren't meant to be malicious intent by any means. I think we all have a lane that we're very good in, and I will never tell a builder how to swing a hammer on a nail, because that's certainly not my lane. But when it comes to developments and trying to find good partnerships and trying to bring needed and quality products to a community to help it be vibrant and sustainable, that is my lane. And so, I hope that this answers, a number of your questions, and concerns, but I truly believe that this is a great product, a great project, and can be a very good partner for the city and OBrien, as long as there continues to be open and honest discussions and reasonable expectations that are well communicated amongst all parties.
Paul, thank you. I appreciate what you just said. And I would say that it's really easy for me to accept completely what you just said. It is. Knowing enough about these types of things. It's interesting to me that if another builder in town had asked to do this project, there's probably no fireworks at the Planning Commission. And to me, that gets to the heart of this situation. And I don't have a problem telling you that I have no intentions of not supporting this, okay? But when I understand, third party, what went on at the Planning Commission, when the owner of a business with his name prominently displayed, maliciousness, I don't know about intent, but I know what it sounded like. And it sounded like I have no intent of doing what you're asking me to do in terms of clean job sites. I'll just use as an example. I had somebody forward me, and I'll be the first person to tell you that I'm not a fan of the word of mouth in Richmond at all. I'm not a big social media guy, but I had somebody forward me a post from there of somebody who, and Paul, I know your family, and I understand what the connection is here, so I'm going to address this to you. And I'm sorry, is it Sue? Susie, I'm sorry. I'm going to address this to you. This is an OBrien home situation. This person who wanted to buy an OBrien home in Hudson, and these pictures they've got of water in the basement, and just, I'm not trying to embarrass you, by the way. I think it's a factual thing. And I think that when folks in the neighborhood are concerned about change, and for what it's worth, almost 40 years ago when my wife and I lived in Southview on Willow Avenue, and for those of you who know where that street is, we had a farm field behind our house. And we actually moved about the time that was being developed back there, but there used to be cows back there. Of course, there aren't anymore. And so to folks who live in Paperjack Place, I get it. They'd love it if there would be less traffic in their neighborhood, right? And so I think those are legitimate concerns, but the reality is that you have property for sale, there's a housing need in Richmond, we have a developer that wants to build. I get all of that. But honest to goodness, the way I understand it, this was a really simple deal a couple of weeks ago, and it became very not simple. And my concern is that there's an attitude and perhaps maybe a history of non-voluntary compliance. How about if I say it that way? And so I want to ask you, Susie, what guarantees do we have that we're not going to have any of that behavior here? I mean, I guess, Paul, to your point, and I think it's all laid out, you did use the term reasonable expectations. Have you read through the 16 conditions?
I believe I read through 14 of them.
Okay, well,
I think I saw the last two.
I want you to make sure you say them all, because I'm going to ask you, do you think those are reasonable? And if you haven't read them all, please do that before you answer, but I want to know, because you said, I think reasonable expectations.
Yeah, I will say that I read
And
them.
I'll say the two conditions are what you and I had talked about on the phone.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything on there that's unreasonable.
Okay.
Certainly.
So-
Yeah, from a developer perspective. correct.
Sure. So this idea of keeping job sites as clean as possible, can we do that? Okay, let the record show that Susie's nodding her head yes. For those who can't hear that.
We have tools that we can make sure that that happens.
But really what I think the point is, and I'm going to steal a phrase from our chief of police, we're looking for voluntary compliance. Yeah, we're putting things in place to help ensure that that happens, but intent's really important to me. And I understand that's not necessarily how the law works, but in this case, I think intent is super important. This is not like you're a new builder coming to town, and you made that point, and it's a good point. You have a business here. You've built, I don't know how many homes, but it's lots of homes. And I think that I've probably driven by that corner many numbers of times wondering. I wonder when. How long's the house been empty?
Almost 2 decades.
Yeah, wow. So I'm excited for the development. I think everybody here is excited for the development. So it's not like, sure, if I lived there, I'd be super happy if it was just quiet and nothing going on. But I get that. That's not at all it. I just want to make sure that we have an intent. Okay, I'm going to use the word super voluntary compliance, that you do all you can to allay the concerns of folks who live in the neighborhood, and whether it's city staff that has to go out there and see what's happening. You know, to Craig's point down there, I don't think the city wants to have an inspector come out there and say, okay, we're not going to issue any more building permits. That's not what we want.
Of course not.
We just want it to go as good as it can go. And that really does have to do with an intent. And when I hear the phrase, no, I'm not doing that, and no, I'm not going to ask my employees to do that, that troubles me. Because I will tell you, as a former lender, this is the engagement phase, right? The minute I say I do, I have to live with my partner. And so if we have a chance to kind of put the proper things in place to help ensure that we have a good result there, that's what we have to do. And of course, in the end, there's going to be an awful lot of trust, isn't there? And so I'm asking you, and perhaps I want you to come up to the microphone and just tell everybody that OBrien Homes is going to live up to the letter of those 16 conditions that are there and really make the folks in that neighborhood as happy as they can be with this development going on. So speak to the microphone, please.
And I will say, I mean, the city wants a great working relationship.
Absolutely.
With developers, with builders. When the council hears stories of staff being kind of what we saw, the planning commission saw at the planning commission meeting, that type of attitude, that type of pushback, when we're hearing from staff that that's what they're receiving, I think what you're sensing, the council's kind of at the end of that. There will start to be issues if that behavior continues. So we're asking politely that there's more compliance, there's a better working relationship. You don't want the council to go down a different path.
Well, in response to that, I would say that I am the representative and obviously with the trusting relationship, I'm going to work directly with Paul on all the compliance issues, and I have also given Beth a stack of business cards.
Okay, Susie, to that point, I want to ask a question. You just said something that was super caught my ears. You said you're going to work with Paul. Okay, so.
Specifics, yeah.
All right, well, Paul, okay, as you're representing the seller, right? And in a traditional situation, paperwork gets signed, you would be gone. What's your relationship going to be going forward?
So, you know, on a couple of things, first of all, to answer some of your other questions, I work with a number of builders in the metro area. And I just want, you know, to lend to some of the comments you made there. I'm going to say that I haven't worked with one builder that has 100% happy customers. I will say that.
I sell cars for a living, so I understand
So
that
you
very well.
understand, okay.
Yep.
All right. You know, secondly, I work in a number of different communities as well. And each community has its, you know, its own way of doing business. And I would like to say that we are always 100% perfect at every community, and we're not. But we do try our best to, you know, to comply and be part of it. And so I think that's important that this, you know, we see these things and everybody engages differently in different communities, but nobody's perfect and nor am I. I'll be the first to wear my shortcomings on my sleeve, okay? But to answer your second question, my response to you is I'm under a contractual obligation to the seller. And so any conversation beyond this transaction would be premature and probably put me in a sticky position with my contractual obligation with the seller. So my participation.
You don't want to answer the question. I understand. So can I just say this? We'd all feel better if you were still around.
Well,
Okay?
my roots go deep in
I understand.
this
No,
community, even though
I
I
got
don't
it.
live here.
No, I got it. We're good. But maybe I'm saying that to Susie. All right? I job here today. Very different from the quasi-presentation that was made a couple of weeks ago at the Planning Commission. See, Paul, you weren't there. Or if you were there, you didn't speak. You didn't answer the question. I guess I'll put it that way. I think you understand what I'm saying. So I think it's interesting. You get a family member who certainly gets the community. And so, I mean, I just appreciate what you said. I just think it would be good. It would be easier for us considering some of the things we've dealt with. So again, I don't mean to beat you over the head with it. I just want it to be understood that we want you to succeed because that's good for you and it's good for us. But this is we're asking for compliance on these issues.
Not only compliance, but be respectful with each other. The meeting ended not being very respectful, and that's something that should not continue. It ended up at the end being not respectful, and that can't happen.
I think with the conversations that I've had with both OBrien, Aranzo, I truly believe that, you know, and I wouldn't put my reputation on it. I truly believe that they want to be a good neighbor and a good partner. And I think, you know, just going through this process will put them in a position to probably demonstrate that as well.
Well, and you understand the proof is in the pudding.
I understand voluntary compliance probably way better than you think.
Again, I sell cars for a living. I don't know if that's true, but we'll go with that.
I would like to make a motion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do wish you guys well.
Thank you.
All right, there's a motion being made.
I would like to approve make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Avondale.
All right, there's a motion to approve the preliminary plat of Avondale. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Craig, can we clarify your motion with the 16 conditions? Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yes.
with the 16 conditions.
Great point.
Are the
So
two
with-
extra in there? In our,
Everything's in there that we discussed at
And
the
I
public
did
hearing.
read at 7 and 16 about the lights and the cleanliness.
And so I just want to
Yes.
ask the question since we're talking about it. Susie, Paul, are you aware of the 16 conditions that are there?
I've read them all. I've talked to them about it, so they're aware of the 16 conditions.
Very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, so with the clarification, it's a motion to approve preliminary plat, 16 conditions. Any discussion?
I just have to ask this question. I already know the answer, but I just want to make sure. There is absolutely no chance that we can do something different with Martin Court.
if you want my opinion on that, I think it's a good idea, to be honest with you.
I mean, I understand it.
Connect the neighborhoods.
I absolutely
I think
understand
that's a
that.
good idea.
Yeah, I understand it. I think it is an amenity that is very highly valued, not only from the Paper Jack Place, but will be from Avondale. It's an amenity that we just don't have something like that anywhere else in the city.
And that's
We
why we
really
took,
don't.
and that's why we took precautions on that intersection, to put in lighting, to put in an awareness of the trail crossing there. It's happened occasionally in the city. There's a few trails that go over crossroads.
Oh, no, I know there is. I'm saying this one was kind of distinctly different that it didn't.
Carrie, I'm not sure what you're talking about, because that's the street that connects Avondale to Paper Jack Place,
Correct.
correct?
Be, yes, right now it's a stub. I mean, it was
It was a
meant
stub, yeah.
to- I mean, my question
That's
to
why
Beth
it's a
was,
stub.
how did you ever know Powers were gonna sell the property to a developer
That's
to
what
be
we have to
developed?
prepare for the future.
Well, and that's, yeah.
When you're saying, is there anything different that can be done, what would you suggest?
I don't know, because that is the only way that we can connect there. I'm not suggesting a bridge, nothing like that. I don't know if there's other opportunities. I'm not an engineer, I don't do CSI, I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it's gonna be, this is just my opinion, I don't think it's gonna be a super high traffic intersection. And if it is, I don't think there's long runs where there's gonna be able to be speeding. It's pretty short run from one road to the behind Martin Court to the next development. It's not like it's, a 500-yard taking a run at it and going across a trail. It's gonna be pretty slow traffic and slow speed neighborhood crossing.
There will be lighting, there will be pavement markings that will
No.
signify pedestrian crossing.
Correct, and we're not
There.
gonna guarantee lighting. What we're gonna do is have our utilities look at it and see if that's the appropriate place for it, or
Okay,
if additional
okay.
lighting would be needed there. So we really are gonna look at it with the engineers, with our electric department, with the Public Works, to make sure that there's the crossings and the safety in place. So we put it very general in there, but we will be working with the engineers to make sure that they're safe. I think it's an important road to connect the two. I think local interior roads connection is really important. I think there are other areas within the city that have a similar situations where there's a trail that crosses a road and they have markings and people are aware of it. I think it's just new for the people in the area, right? And it's new because there's going to be people crossing a trail where there's now a street where there wasn't a street before. But I think that we've taken steps to let those folks know in the public meeting and in the neighborhood meeting that we're really going to be taking precautions to make sure this is as safe as we can possibly do it. And I think Craig and Fred can attest to that. I mean, I asked the question myself of our planner. He's been planning for 30 years. I said, Dan, what can we do to make this safer? That was at the meeting, and I asked that question, and he kind of gave us some of these ideas.
Okay.
So I think we're doing everything kind of in our power to make that safe.
And
Thank you.
Dan made a couple of nice points on connecting neighborhoods and just to
No,
have a
and that
neighborhood
totally
feel.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, I couldn't imagine being a mail carrier and having to go back out to 140th just to get to the other side. I mean, it completely makes sense. I just have a fair number, and we're not just talking one or two constituents. We're talking multiple people that live in that area that are super disappointed to see this happen. Now, if I lived there and knew that street kind of dead-ended there, I would have assumed that eventually we're going to connect
There's a
it.
reason it dead ended there.
Right, but 15 years of living there and never having that, and being able to send your kiddo out and say, yeah, you're good all the way, this half-mile stretch that goes all the way to Paper Jack. I mean, that's great. They're gonna lose that confidence
Now you
a
can send
little
your
bit.
kiddo out on a trail behind that development to the school across the road, to Paper Jack Park, all the way down there through there, never touching 140th.
Right.
So, had it not been
Now
for
you
this
just need to get it
development,
out to Peninsula, Craig.
we could kick them out to Peninsula, that's fine. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that that are always gonna happen when we have developments come in.
Yeah.
It's the not my backyard is common. And understandable. I get it too.
All right, any other
Beth?
questions or any discussion?
We're on year 2 now, aren't we, with that house in my development that Overlane built that they haven't finished?
And the house is finished, it's the landscaping, and we're on year 1, yes. They told us they would hit it this spring. So there are some concerns. I think it's in different areas of town, Tom, so I think it's, we brought it to their attention, yes. I actually talked to Susie about it, and I've talked to Travis about it, And
Bringing it to their attention doesn't mean it's going to get done.
I can't answer that. I'm not the developer.
I live in a development where you guys built 75% of the single-family homes. You'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that's happy. You can cross all the Ts and dot all the Is you want as far as getting this thing going, but if you don't finish what you're building, you're gonna have a lot of pissed off people. And I think that's been already brought up. As far as I'm concerned, you're not a very good builder. And you gotta do things better.
Any other discussion? Motion and a second. Hearing no other discussion, call the roll.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
No.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
The motion passes 4-1. Item 8.2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Item 8.2, Resolution 032-201, the 2021 amended budget.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have some slides prepared for you tonight, so, but in your packet is a more kind of in-depth review in regards to 2021 budget amendments, as well as carry forward funds and assigned balances now that our accounting for 21 is closing, and we, on an annual basis, bring forward the budget amendments as one resolution that then allows us to move forward with our audit next week for the 2021 year. So Michelle, if you can advance. Like I said, I'm just gonna go over a few of the highlights. Mainly we focus on the general fund. That's the fund that will have the most budget amendments associated with it. But there are 23 other funds that we are responsible for overseeing with a combined dollar amount of $30 million annually. But on the general fund, and what's outlined in your packet, actual revenue was $7,861,454 compared to a budget of just over $7 million. So we had a positive variance in revenue of $835,000, which is 111% of budget. From an expenditure standpoint, expenditures were just under $8 million, and budget was just over $7 million. So again, we had a variance of $931,000, or expenditures were 113% of budget. Some of the main drivers associated with both revenue and expenditures on the revenue standpoint, the largest driver of that variance was for the property sale of the Double G property, accounting for $427,000 in property sales. Building permit revenue exceeded budget by just under $115,000. Share ride taxi was $170,000. Room tax revenue exceeded budget of $47,000. Miscellaneous revenue, which incorporates some miscellaneous like clerk permits and things of that nature, was $40,000. And then court penalties exceeded budget too of $36,000. Those revenues were offset by some expenditure drivers. So $247,000 is noted as transfers to capital projects for 2020 projects. That is the carry forward funds that were from 2020 that were earmarked for 2021 capital projects. There's actually $386,000 of those carry forward funds, but in 21 we only expended $247,000 of those. Additionally, the revenue that we brought in from the sale of the Double G property was also a transfer out to the capital projects account to help offset the expense of the police building project that reduced our borrowing there. And in all areas, and we'll go over this in greater detail during the April meeting, but in most areas of the general fund budget or the operational level, all of them were favorable to budget from an operational expense. So if we go to the second slide, just an overview on fund balance. Again, the three components that make up fund balance is unrestricted, assigned and non-spendable. You'll see that overall, even though our expenditures were slightly more than what our revenue brought in, because of those transfers from 2020, the amount that we still have remaining in our fund balance is relatively unchanged. Just kind of the buckets in which those funds reside in changed. So from an unrestricted cash perspective, we actually have a differential of about $550,000 of an increase in unrestricted cash. Assigned, we saw a decrease in assigned fund balance of $208,000, mainly again attributable to the use of the surplus funds from 2020 that were then used for capital projects in 21. And then non-spendable, that was reduced by $280,000. Again, some of those funds that were restricted actually became now liquid. So they moved from a non-spendable into an unrestricted categorization. So overall, the net difference in the overall fund balance was $32. But that unrestricted portion, that increased significantly. So when we look at unrestricted cash as a percentage of revenues, our amount went to 44%. And again, I think the council will recall, like, our target from a city's perspective is a 25%. The government finance officers recommends a 17% basis. So we're certainly are meeting our target minimum and exceeding that, and have been for several years. So healthy fund balance, continue to have a healthy fund balance. So those are all signs that are pointing in really good aspects for us. And again, in the packet, it details out where all of the budget amendments are occurring from segment levels. We have it itemized out in regards to what the assigned or appropriation amounts are by line item, and then also what the non-spendable amount is. So the motions that we're looking for tonight in order to move forward with the budget, and last one, is threefold. We would be looking for a motion for the resolution 032201, which provides the amended 2021 budget. And then we would also be looking for a motion to carry forward the restricted fund balance into 2022 in the amount of $490,769.34. And then the assigned fund balance in the amount of $99,699.50.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the amended 2021 budget, adopt the amended 2021 budget, carry forward and assign funds as presented and attached, resulting in the following, which are listed there. That $32 is breaking my heart, so there you go.
We were kind of hoping for 31, but
Well, or just, zero. But, donations, Mike,
there you
could
go,
make
Mike.
that neutral, or you could actually
Getting
see
32
an
bucks out of
increase,
him, that would be a
33, and then I
miracle.
could reflect that in the dollars.
It would take something more than an approved motion to make that happen.
We have a motion in a second.
If we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 032201 and the restricted fund balance and the assigned fund balances there, as you see in the board. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.3 is board and commission appointments. Sean Demling to the Public Safety Committee and Scott Grady to Public Works Committee. Says
Mr.
part
Mayor,
of the citizens.
I'm going to offer a motion that we approve appointing Sean Demling to the Public Safety Committee and Scott Grady to the Public Works Committee.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the appointments. Any discussion?
I just want to say this, that it was Alderman Breeze's idea a while ago to try to work to increase public participation on these committees. I think it's a great idea. And this kind of meets the first bar that we set, is getting those filled. So good job.
Totally agree. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 8.4 is the 2022-23 farm lease. Is
Mayor and council, every couple of years, we seek bids from local farmers who are interested in leasing city-owned property. This is at Freedom Park and then undeveloped land in the Business and Technical Park. We received 2 bids that are included in your packet. The staff recommendation would be to award the lease to Brett Newman at $153 per acre, so for a total amount of $13,311.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we award the city farm lease to Brett Newman for 22-23 in the amount of $13,311 total.
All right, there's a motion to approve the farm lease. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
The motion and a second to approve the farm lease. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.5 is Utility Commission Recommendation, Private Development, RPR Proposal.
So this item was recommended by the Utility Commission at their February meeting. When it comes to private development projects, anytime there's underground utilities involved, we would typically have a city staff representative out in the field doing inspections. As we look ahead at the upcoming construction season and knowing we have limited staff and that we have a lot of construction going on, there may be a need at some point where we would have to use someone from SEH to assist with those inspections. The cost is borne by the developer, whether it's a city staff member or if it's a contracted employee. And so this, especially when we have projects going on in Fox Run, Meadow Crossing, kind of all different geographic areas of the city. And then on top of our just day-to-day responsibilities that the department has, it has become a stretch for our staff to be able to do a quality job inspecting these. So the recommendation from staff and the Utility Commission would be to approve the private development RPR contract with SEH for inspection duties for the upcoming year.
So Noah, was there any discussion? I know that we have had staff basically spend full-time hours throughout the entire construction season, multiple years. Has there been any discussion about us maintaining staffing so that we could handle those responsibilities? Just knowing, I mean, I'm looking at what SEH would charge, and it's pretty significant, although you said that the cost is borne by the developer, which is great. But what have those discussions yielded?
Yeah, so a lot of our inspections have typically been on our own street and utility reconstruction projects.
Okay.
So we'll have someone, like most recently, Adam Jackson from Water Department has been out there, and he's there the whole summer,
Yep.
and making sure that, especially when we're redoing a street like that we have someone there on site. I think as we look ahead to this year, there's probably a lot more private development projects when it comes to constructing streets, underground infrastructure than what we've had in recent years, where we've had a lot of more infill development. And so looking at, the Avondale project, possible future phase in Fox Run, where, there'd be we don't have the staffing capacity to just be everywhere. On top of our own street and utility projects that'll be coming up on North 4th Street.
So
And-
we've predominantly used internal staff to manage our own street reconstruction projects, so
Correct.
not the private development.
Correct.
Months,
And that
okay.
really started back 2015, 2016. Marty Powers started doing a lot of that. And there was a cost saving, especially when it's a city street reconstruction project, to do
Right.
that in-house. When it comes to the private development projects, it's more of a pass-through cost, whether it's one of our staff members or, like I said earlier, someone from SEH.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the private development RPR contract with SEH to assist in fulfilling inspection duties in 2022 as laid out in the memo.
All right, there's a motion to approve this proposal. Is there a second to that motion?
Second it.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderperson Kraft.
Yes.
That motion passes. Item 8.6 is the Park Board recommendation, Mary Park Restroom Remodel.
We solicited competitive bids for remodels to the existing restroom facility at Mary Park. Because the construction cost is over $25,000, it has to not only go to the park board, but also comes to the city council for approval. The recommendation from Park Board and city staff would be to approve the bid from Jamin Peterson Building Services in the amount of $44,400.
Mr. Mayor, I would offer a motion that we approve the bid from Jim and Peterson in the amount of, I'm sorry, what was it?
$44,400.
$44,400. I cannot see that far.
You
I'll
need
s-
my
I'll s-
cheaters, Carrie?
I'll second that. She needs a
Yes.
telescope. I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to go with Jamin Peterson on the remodeling of the bathrooms up there at Mary Park. Is there any discussion?
I actually just have one. So I see in the bid, add adult changing tables.
Yes,
Am I reading that right?
yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And so really, this would be, that improves the ADA compliance of those bathrooms?
What it does is the philosophy of the park that's going next to it,
Yeah.
that was kind of a requisite to say
Will's Playground,
Will's Playground.
the hope.
Part of that was the understanding that that was going to be part of this renovations.
No, it's all good. I was just curious.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item H7 is the banner poles on Knowles Avenue.
I'm going to take this one in the absence of Eric and Dave. The Public Works Committee approved purchasing and installing 2 fiberglass poles to go on Knowles Avenue just north of the bridge near Subway, one on either side of the street, to be used for Christmas decorations and also to be used for banners to highlight upcoming events for organizations. So staff reached out to the DOT because it is a state highway. We can have banners hanging across the street if they meet certain criteria. So the process would be if a local organization wanted to hang a banner, let's say promoting Fun Fest, for example, they would submit an application to the city. It would be approved or not, but by the Director of Public Works, and then it would go to the DOT. What staff is looking for approval or recommendation on is the amount we would charge those local organizations to do the actual hanging of the banner and, you know, the install and uninstall, I guess. So staff took a look at time and equipment involved and came up with $250. So we're seeking council's approval for that amount.
So when you talk about banners, you're talking about something that actually stretches across the highway.
Yep, one side of the street to the other.
So for example, in the movie Cars, we have that kind of like at the finish line. So Chief, if we had one that was like a quarter mile away, that would lend itself, okay, you probably get where I'm going with this.
Racing, is that?
Well, with the chief's okay, I suppose we could have that, but then it wouldn't be fun if the chief said it was okay. There you go. Anyhow, but I guess, I don't think you said it, Lori, but the tourism committee actually has approved the funds to buy the poles. Maybe you did say that.
I didn't say it was in the memo, but they approved half of the cost, basically. We estimate the poles will be $10,000 and the tourism
He's gonna
allowed
pay-
$5,000 in
Pay
funding.
half of those, so
Yep.
no,
Public Works pays the other half.
and so just out of curiosity, you said, so every banner that goes up has to be approved by the state before it can go up?
Correct. They're a pretty,
Both.
yep.
Oh,
So it would first go to Eric as the Director of Public Works, and if it met our criteria, it would go on to the state DOT.
Do you
There
know
are
what the,
some pretty strict guidelines that have to be followed, obviously, with letter size and language. And
Content.
it can't be too distracting to drivers.
what kind of a turnaround is there from the state, do you know? Any guess?
That I'm not sure of.
I know when they reviewed our wayfinding signage, it was a couple weeks.
Okay. So we set that expectation with people who want to put a banner up.
Mhm.
Like the wayfinding signs that were put up, those brown and green ones, they approved the font, you know, making sure there's nothing in the color, all that. I think in this, they're probably looking more for, is it local event, or is it, you have a logo for a sponsor, or is it something, like Lori said, it's distracting? But I would think a fairly quick turnaround. Just knowing other communities that have these up, you see them circulate, fairly regularly for whether it be a farmer's market, the carnival.
I thought I read in here somewhere, excuse me, applications had to be in 30 days prior to it actually going up. Maximum would be 3 weeks.
So the state maximum time to hang a banner is 30 days, I believe. The city was just tightening that up a little bit.
So Lori, do we have to make sure, do we need to reach out to the DOT to find out, like, what is the timeline for approval? What do we need to put in our policy to make sure people can submit the applications? Like, we say 30 days, but I think Fred, you were indicating that that might not be enough time for them to kind of turn around and say yes or no.
Sure, yep, I can reach out.
I'd like to offer a motion to approve the rental fee for the banner poles.
All right,
Presented.
is it just the rental fees? You want to kind of approve all of it? Up the poles and that type of stuff?
I thought that was approved
So the
already, poles.
pole placement doesn't need to be approved by the
All right,
council
so it is
because of
just
the
the
dollar
250.
amount. So it's really just the amount
All right,
that you're
well, then you
willing
are-
to charge for
you're more
renting.
perceptive than I.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the $250 rental fee. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.8 is the 2021 fourth quarter tourism funding recommendations.
Mayor and Council, the Tourism Committee met in February to review applications for fourth quarter 2021 funding requests. They reviewed an application from the Chamber of Commerce for Hometown Holiday, Big Ring Flyers Cycling Group for their Fat Tire event that happened in January. And then the City of New Richmond had requests in for the banner poles we just discussed and the different support for athletic facilities that are used during the summer, Hatfield, the Sports Center, and Citizens Field. They totaled, I have that in the memo, an amount that I was going to request for you to approve.
714539.
Nope, 714539 was the chamber, 144 was the Fat Tire, 19,327.07 was the athletic facility, and then 5,000 for the street banners, with a carry forward amount of $3,556.11 that will go to the first quarter of 2022. So we're looking for approval for the funding.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve the tourism funding recommendations as laid out in the memo.
Including the $3,556.11.
Carryover, including all of the stuff that's in the memo.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for to approve the 2021 fourth quarter tourism funding recommendations. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Mike, you can tell that Michelle has trained me pretty well. Carry forward in the.
She's especially good at that.
Very
Slightly
good.
above average.
Slightly above.
Slightly above average.
Slightly above. Item 8.9 is the Civil Legal Services Agreement with Eckberg Lammers.
And I can introduce this, and then Nick Vivian, our city attorney, is also available virtually. But our existing contract for legal services has expired. The proposal included in your packet is for an additional 5 years. Both parties can opt out with 90 days notice, so by either side. The contract includes both a general legal services retainer as well as a retainer for employment legal service matters, so personnel matters, human resources related issues. So we've enjoyed our working relationship with the firm over several years now, and the
The truth is, no, though, we wish we would see less of Nick. So. No, I said it, and Nick knows why I said it. But Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the legal services agreement as it's presented from Eckberg Lammers.
I will second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second for the, to approve the legal services agreement with Eckberg Lammers. Is there any discussion?
I notice you're not here, Nick. I mean,
Cutting down on the
seriously?
expenses evidently.
Seriously?
Well, I'll blame that one on my kids. It happens to be the week they're off here, so.
All right.
We're in a nice warm climate.
It is warmer here in Florida than it is.
Oh, I thought he was going to say Hudson. Yeah, it's a lot warmer down here in Hudson.
All right, any discussion? All right, good for you. Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
And that motion passes, even though he threw his kids underneath the bus.
Thank you.
Item 810 is the Memorandum of Understanding, Future Use of Existing Library.
So Mayor and Council, while we're very excited to be working on the plans for the new library building project, one of the most frequently asked questions is what's going to happen to the current library building. And we've had conversations, done some research over the last several months, and obviously there's some deed restrictions in terms of what can be done with that property and with the building. And looking at our partnership with the school district and working with them on plans for the new building and with them conveying the land to us to construct that site, the former home of the old middle school, we felt this could be really a win-win to meet additional needs for the district and still keeping in looking at those original intent of the land that was given to the city, Glover Park, and then the Friday Memorial Library several decades ago. And really that it ties back to education, that it's serving the community, both city and township residents. It meets a facility need for the district as they continue to grow and see enrollment increases. And so the MOU included in the packet, this is not a formal lease agreement. It's really memorializing that we intend to work together in good faith on that project. So a more formal lease agreement would actually have to be developed once the new library would be constructed. But the school district has discussed having early childhood classes, tutoring, community education. We feel that's a great fit for the site. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
I would make a motion to approve the MOU with the school district.
All right, there's a motion to approve the MOU with the school district. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
I'll third it.
Motion, a second, and a third. Any discussion?
What's the length of time, the duration? I mean, we really have a duration on this?
No.
All right, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 811 is Resolution 032202, authorization to apply for WEDC grant.
So on the note of the library project, we're looking at opportunities to receive outside funding for the project, looking at state, federal grant opportunities. One of those is through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. So most grant applications require authorization from the council. We would have to provide a copy of the minute showing that the council has authorized staff to apply for the grant. In this case, this grant opportunity is for $250,000. We would intend to apply for this here in the coming months. So this resolution just allows staff to apply for the grant.
I would
Motion
make, go ahead, Pete.
Motion to approve Resolution 032202 as presented.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion, a second, and a
Wait a
third
minute.
again.
We're fighting over should we get $250,000 or not? I think that's what we're trying to say here.
I have Alderman
Apply.
Kraft as winning that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Buzzed in first.
I know.
Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Reluctantly, yes. And that motion passes. Item 812, excuse me, Resolution 032203, adopting a citizen participation plan for a CDBG application.
So similar to our last item of discussion, this is for a community development block grant. This is not the authorizing resolution itself. That would come to the council at a future meeting. Some of you may have been on the council previously when we've applied for CDBG funding. There are a lot of components to this application, and so there'll likely be additional resolutions for this that would be brought forward. But this is for the citizen participation plan. So obviously anytime we're working on a public project like that and using federal dollars, they want to make sure that the community is well informed and aware of the project. They have an opportunity to attend public meetings. So this resolution is just the adoption of that citizen participation plan. You would see some additional resolutions here in the coming months. This application is actually due in May, so likely at the April meeting, you'll see some additional items for your consideration.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve Resolution 032203.
All right, there's a motion to approve Resolution 032203. Is there a second to that motion?
I'm going to second that motion.
All right, there's no thirds? on
Craig, I
this
was
one?
waiting for you.
No, I'm out of it now.
This,
You made me mad last time.
this includes the G part of this grant application?
Sure does.
All right. There's motion to second. Is there any discussion?
Just, I want to say this. I think it's super important that the public gets involved. I saw an email from somebody who lives in town who's got some thoughts. We need all of that stuff, and the more, the merrier. So I know that we've had a couple of meetings at the high school talking about this project, and it's a big project that could have a super positive impact in the community, and we just would love to hear people's thoughts. And so I understand why this is here, but I just want to encourage folks to get involved and let their voices be heard and give us some input.
Very good. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 9, communications and miscellaneous. Again, I'll throw out to everybody, we do have a parade. We have a little event going on Thursday. Come on down, celebrate the local heritage, have a good time, buy a button, help support the expenses of the parade. Anybody else have any communications?
I just,
I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows out there in the audience and at home, you don't have to wear a kilt. You can go to the parade and not have to wear a kilt.
But they are amazingly comfortable to wear, as I believe the chief could second that as well. So I was asked a question, Chief. Will you be there in your kilt?
Quite frankly, Mayor, I'm not sure I can get into it anymore.
I was just gonna throw this out that, it's interesting to me that we're coming up to the 2-year anniversary of COVID. And I remember the night of St. Patrick's Day 2 years ago, deliberately when I left work, and it really felt like the world was coming to an end, and deliberately driving through Main Street, which I don't need to do that to go home, and there was not one car. And I'm just super happy that this year, I think there's not going to be a shortage of folks downtown. And to that end, just the city staff, it's been a hard situation that you all have navigated and done a great job. And I don't know that it's necessarily over, but I'm just glad we are where we are today. So thank you for all your hard efforts. And really, I'm not Irish, but I hope the Irish cut loose, and I know they don't need that as an encouragement. But and even the non-Irish, but it's just going to be nice to know that vibrancy has taken place in downtown.
But please do it responsibly.
Yes.
Mayor and council, just a reminder that absentee ballots went in the mail today for over 300 requests we already had in office. Anybody can contact us. The election is April 5th, and early in-person voting opens next Tuesday, the 22nd. So please feel free to come vote. Early is good. And sample ballots are on the bulletin board in the hallway, and they're also on our website.
And what is the status of drop boxes?
The drop boxes cannot be used. If a ballot is put in a drop box, it cannot be counted. So we have included a memo with every absentee ballot that went in the mail, reminding them of that. We also will be putting very, very distinct signage on the drop boxes telling people to not put ballots in there. So ballots must come back to us by US mail or be handed to clerk staff.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Any other communications? All right, hearing none. Item 10 is closed session per Wisconsin Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, investing of public funds, yada, yada, for 620 South Green Avenue and 707 East 6th Street.
I'll offer a motion that we go into closed session.
The motion to go
Second.
into closed session, we have a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Breeze? Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
And that motion passes, and we'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll start back up again.